All right, we can do German style. Now it's 10:15. We can start if we are ready. And if other people are joining, they will just arrive later. So welcome to the second day of the DrupalCamp Berlin. Today is also a special day here in Berlin because it's the 9th of November. So 35 years ago, there was no wall anymore. So special moment here to give you a nice presentation about how to polish your Drupal website. Like some optimizations, also last-minute optimizations, because there are many things that you will just miss during development time. And once the website is live, it's kind of hard to change some of the things. I'm Yannick, working for 1x Internet here in Berlin, doing Drupal since 2009, so almost half of my life. And back in 2012, I started to create that module called Final Polish. And the idea was to just enable that module and to disable specific paths that are there out of the box, or to make sure that you don't have so many 404s and so on. But this was, good old times. And when we check what we have 12 years later, in 2024, we see that we have still the same issues as back in the days. So there are many websites, Drupal websites out there. If you try to put /node into the URL, you see all the content that is promoted to front page. In 90% of the cases, it's not even styled. You see a random pager here that goes until the very end. And there's also that RSS feed, that is this subscribe to link. And when you open that one, you also see stuff that shouldn't be there. Nowadays, it's super easy to get rid of that. So to remove that front page view that is providing /node and /rss.xml, you can simply go to the views overview and disable the front page, because I think that you take care of your front page yourself, and then you are good to go. The next one is the good old filter tips page. So that page shows you all the stuff that is possible with your text formats. And even if you don't have any text areas where your users, anonymous users, can put some data in, you still have access to that. And the easiest way to get rid of this one is to apply that patch here, and then you can also clean that up. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have that page available and publicly accessible, but I think if you want to polish your project, you should make sure that this page is not there if it's not needed at all. The next one is also an interesting one. So there are many content types that people create just to represent some data, to reference some data somewhere else, like teasers or whatever. But it's not meant to be public. The same with taxonomy terms. So for example, you start tagging all of your media entities, and then you have a media tags vocabulary. What you can do, you can just try taxonomy /term 1, and you go until 100, I don't know. And then there's a high chance that you see stuff that was tagged, but this shouldn't be public, and you want to hide those detail pages. So talking about some nodes, but also talking about some terms. And in order to do that, you can simply install the rabbit hole module. I hope that many of you already know that module, because it has I think several K of installations. But it's super nice. You just install that module. You edit your vocabulary, for example, media tags, and then there's that section rabbit hole settings, and here you can easily change the behavior to page not found, and then you won't see the taxonomy term pages, which are just showing the content that was referenced there. Another important thing is to check your watchdog, to check your database logging. Especially if you start running your website and this is live on the internet, then you should check your database logging messages, because there will be some 404s. So maybe you know that situation where /favicon.ico is being called, but there's also the legendary Apple Touch icon that Apple devices want to request, and if there's no file available at that path, you get a 404. And in order to fix that, you could set up a redirect, or if you want to do the, let's say, like the super simple approach, you just place them in your Git repository. But this depends on your developers, how they want to integrate that. But just make sure that you don't have tons of 404s in your logs, because then it might be hard to find the important logs that are, or the important messages that were logged. Also, the sitemap.xml is sometimes being missed. And in order to fix that, you can simply install the simple XML sitemap module. And it's also really nice, not only for your SEO team, but also for search engines to find or to be able to see the content that you want to provide and submit to the search engines. One thing that seems so easy, but sometimes you just forget this. You run your website, you start sending some emails, and then the actual email address was not changed yet. So therefore, it makes sense to just double check your site email address before you start deploying your website to production. And if we talk about emails, we also want to talk about forms, because all of you should test the web forms that you created. I mean, at some point, people were creating the web form. This is in Git. Everything is fine. But just double check all the forms, everything that you can submit. Check all the confirmation text that you get. Check also the email address that was used to send the email address, because this is just how to make sure that you have good quality out there on the streets. One super important thing that is missed, even if we have this GDPR thing here, I think since 2015, but I don't know why, but there are not so many websites using the web form encrypt module. So that means that you take a dump from production, for example, and there are all those web form submissions by real users that your people also have in the database. And to make sure that you don't have stuff like that in your database, just install the web form encrypt module and make sure that you don't have sensitive data, especially if other people had like their contact information and all that stuff filled in those submissions. The cookie content manager. I know there are many solutions out there. It's always hard. They always mess up with our Lighthouse score. It's annoying to implement them, but we need to implement them. But it's super important that before you go live, that you really double check your cookies and what kind of request you are firing. So let's take a quick example here. I took Drupal.org. There's also this nice banner. Drupal.org is asking me, hey, would you like to get tracked or not? Without even clicking that, I was checking the dev tools. So I just put domain Drupal.org. I inverted this, so show me everything that is not Drupal.org. And I see tons of requests, even if I didn't allow like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, or like other things that show up here. And this is, I think, a bad example. So I hope you are doing better and you make sure that you have consent before you start tracking your users. Another important thing is two-factor authentication. I think this goes into the same category as web form encrypt. This is like a module that, seems too easy to use, but we are not really using this out there in all of our Drupal websites. And the two-factor authentication is also super important, because when you think about one user got hacked and then they have like access to other email addresses, to some sensitive data and all that stuff, you should make sure that the authentication flow is safe. So if there's no single sign-on that you are using, then please make sure that you have a look at the two-factor authentication module, and then you can follow best practice here. There's another case which is maybe something minor. Maybe you think this is not a big thing, but if you want to polish your website and you allow people to register on your website, you don't want to create a new user and then the user ID is 7. Then you know you are the 7th customer, or this is always a bit, or the same for order numbers. When I start submitting my order and they see it's order 100, then I think, this is not the big shop, or maybe this is scamming or a scam or whatever. I would love to have something like this, because this looks kind of random. And in order to get that, you also just don't need much. You can just use one SQL statement that is changing the counter of the users, for example, and then you can just execute alter table users, setting the auto increment, so setting the counter to that number, and then the next user will be 90 at the end. And this is just nice to make sure that people don't know like how many users or how many orders are already there. one thing that I always experience again and again. So maybe you know that kind of folders. At some point this changed in Drupal, so every file that you upload will be put into year and then month. So this was like the easiest way to find a folder structure. But in the end, this looks like a big mess. This looks like my desktop where all the files live in nested folders, something here. But this is not giving me a structured file organization, file system. And also you see all the file names. So this means if you upload your picture and you put, for example, right-click, open image in new tab, and then you see the file name that the editor used to upload something, which can be something that you don't want. For example, for my employee picture on my website, I put Yannick_duckface file 2, and this is not something that you want to expose to your website visitors. So what you should do is to think about what kind of data, what kind of files you are storing in your Drupal website, and what kind of folder structure could make sense. So what I would love to see is something that is structured. This means we have a nice folder structure in place, and that we also make use of the file field path module to actively renaming those files if it makes sense. So this means we could have something like this: the files folder, audio, images, videos. I have my content types, and because this is just not important and we don't need the real file name, we can just use the UUID of my news image, for example. And like this, it's super easy. It also looks nice in the URL, and then you stop exposing the date when something got uploaded. So sometimes you check a website and you see, they have some case studies, but you don't see the date when the case study was published. And then you just do right-click, open image and new tab, and then you see, this was one project from 2009 or whatever folder we could take. But if we have this in the URL, we are also exposing when something got uploaded, and this is not what we necessarily want. So therefore, rethink your folder structure, and for upcoming projects, for example, you could think about what kind of files you have and what kind of structure is helpful. And to do that, you just install the file field path module, and this is the default Drupal folder name, which is the year, the current year, and the current month. And then, with just one change, we could just put this folder to image news. This is stuff that you can do in core. You don't need another module for this. But file field path also allows you to rename the file. So if there's just, for my news, there's just one big image, so I could just use the node UUID. You can also use other file name options that you can transliterate, that you can use path auto to remove some weird stuff out of that file name. So that is also possible. But in the end, I would just love to open a project, download all the files, and then I can directly see that. And this is how I would also love to organize my own desktop, but my own desktop looks more like this. So it's always important to clean up, especially in your file system, because we shouldn't just have the feeling that we put our files random where Drupal is storing its files. We should also make sure this looks nice. Using a screen reader. I know there's this European Accessibility Act that will be, I think end of June next year. And many people are talking about this accessibility and all that stuff. But no matter what kind of stuff they are following, putting alt text or whatever, they never used a screen reader. And I don't know what kind of machines you are using, but on Mac there is this command called function command F5. It's like one crazy thing you do. And then you can really just tap through the website, and then there's an interesting voice always announcing what kind of stuff you have. And if you are dealing with SVGs on your website, then you will realize the experience, and you need what is important to be announced. So for example, you put some, you have some teaser cards with some SVGs, with some icons, and then you want to make sure that people who need that accessibility things, that they can just tap through your website, and the icons will also get announced. And for that, there are different things like area labels, or there are different attributes that you can put on your elements. But the most important thing is that you just try to grab a screen reader, no matter what OS you are using, and then to try to use your own website, and then you will see how hard it is. And it will also take some time to fix this and to optimize this, because accessibility is good for sales, and I think it's also good to get some new budget for projects, because this is definitely where you can polish your website, and then it feels really nice to also learn that your developers can also learn how you can write markup, not in a complex way, but just in a way that you have in mind, okay, if this is an SVG, I need another attribute to make this announceable. If you have, for example, some links which are like fake buttons and you cannot tap them, or imagine there's like a span and you just click it and then something opens. This is by default not tabbable, so people using a screen reader will not be able to use those. So open the screen reader, just check your website, and then you will see where it fails. And it will fail very early, I guess. Another thing that people love to forget, it's the OG image. Nowadays, you share messages through, I don't know, WhatsApp, iMessage, Slack, Twitter, whatever. And the preview image is called the OG image, which is Open Graph Image, a protocol that Facebook started. But the OG image is, let's say, the default way how to also use a picture when you share links to your website. And it looks so boring. Imagine you send someone our cool website to the DrupalCamp and it just looks like this. I mean, this is not attractive. This is not something where I would love to click on now. So this is not what we want to do. What we would love to do is have something like this, that you just see that nice picture that was perfectly prepared in this correct aspect ratio, and you will see that in all your messenger platforms. You will see this in Slack, and no matter if your client asks you for this or not, you should proactively tell them, or you should think about a logo that they could use. So you could just put the client logo if it's just about the front page, and with the meta text module, you can just make sure that every path, every page is using that OG image. And for bonus points, you also change the OG image for your, let's say, events, for your news, whatever, so that you can really use that, that important image field that was used for a news. That will be then displayed here if I just share one particular news here. One thing that is also important to mention again, so when you use the meta text module, you can just define a rule that the page title is always the node title followed by the site name. But the problem is that you start going live and then you realize, wait, there's still front page in here, but wait, it should be rather something like this because it's the front page, I don't need the node title here. So quick reminder that you make sure that you also have one separated meta tag configuration that is only for the front page. This is then also the configuration where you put your default or like another OG image just for the front page, so that that might be the way to go and looks much more nice. Lint your code. I think you already know this, but it's important to say this again and again, because there are many things that developer can fix already during development time. And at the end, your website is live, and then there's no budget or there's no need to fix existing things. And therefore, always make sure that during your development time, while you're working on things, that you always lint your code, that your pipelines are also checking that the code is linted, so that we can ensure that we have a clean code base and that everything is following your project rules or your company rules. One thing that might be obvious, but also important to mention again, in order to not having people messing up with things like views, fields, or the config, it's important to just make sure that those are uninstalled on production. Otherwise, the client, I hope that the client doesn't have so many permissions, but in case they are changing some fields or rearranging some stuff, changing some views, disabling the front page view because they had the session and they want to get rid of /node. Everything of that will be not in code. So in order to prevent this, just make sure that there's no option to change things on production. One of the best, and also I think the last hint I can give you, please create a maintenance page, html.twig file. because there will be situations where you really need to turn off your website right now for security reasons, or something happened, you need to turn it off. And then you see this old garland thing here from Drupal 6, and it just looks unstyled. I mean, this looks even kind of cool, but when you just check your theme and there's no maintenance page, then you get the default Drupal HTML and it will look really bad. So to know that also in emergency situations, your maintenance page will look nice, will also give you a better feeling. So then it's also fine to fail, because then at least you have a nice maintenance page. This was already it. My few points here, how you can polish your website. And as I said in the session description, this is also like the checklist, so you don't need to check the whole presentation. And if you want to share those 18 points with some other colleagues, with people, you can grab that QR code, and that will directly get you into the slides to the checklist page. Alternatively, I can go one slide back, and then you can take a picture, old school style. All right, this was... Yeah, QR code again. And even if this is obvious, I think it's important to remember and to repeat this again and again, because 2012, I created that module, Final Polish, but /node is still a thing in our Drupal universe. So yeah, just a quick reminder, and double check all of your client websites, and maybe you will find some things that, that you didn't implement or that you should implement. Thank you. Do you have any questions or tips or hints what you would also recommend to the others?
I didn't get the name of the module that provides the file name tokens.
Mm-hmm. This was the file field path module. It's not just file path, but back in the days, okay, it was file field, so everything that is path and file, just file field path.
I have a question regarding this module. In case I take data from a digital asset manager, like container or something, can I still use this module in time, like to change the file names, or do I really have to rely that everything is completely sorted out in my
This is interesting.
asset manager?
That's interesting. So, for example, S3 by Amazon or something, you mean? When you
we're going to use container, but we don't know how it's going to behave yet. So
okay, but that's interesting. So I think from a developer perspective, I think that that the name of the file will be renamed before it will get pushed to the file storage. So I would guess that it will be renamed like this.
all right.
Otherwise, time to create an issue for that. Anything else, or are you equipped? Okay, nice. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the, where I feel like, what would be your tip regarding the OG images? You showed it earlier. So like, how are we handling this for the because like everybody wants to share things on LinkedIn, and then they want to share on Twitter, and then they want to share on Facebook, and all of those platforms have different sizes.
Yeah, it's like what I did, or from my experience, I can say that this format that Facebook defined, what is it, 1,200 is the width, and I think 630 is the height. It's a super weird aspect ratio, but this works super well in Facebook, Twitter, iMessage. LinkedIn is always a bit special, but it looks also fine when you share something. Yeah, I mean, for those, focal point, yeah, definitely. I hope that all of you are using that you're using the focal point module in case that you change the aspect ratio of your image. Another good tip. But it's just important that, that you are using big cards. So if you use like a squared one, it looks kind of cheap. So yeah, it's always recommended to have something like a business card format. And for my news, for example, I could imagine to have my primary image of a news as a maybe like hero image, and then to be able to use that hero image with like a specific image style that you should also create, then you can make sure that your uploaded news picture is using that aspect ratio. So let's say a sub-hint of this topic is to create a new image style, for example, OG image, social image, or whatever naming you like. And then you make sure that you have focal, scale, and crop to 1,200 and 630. and then all of your uploaded images will use the correct aspect ratio.
I would say make sure that they have enough white space or blue space in that case, so it's suitable for resizing, because moving targets with standard sizes of social media.
Yeah. But if you just use your image style, then you can make sure that you have full control. And if you need to change everything, or you go for squared versions because this is too big, you just want to have like a smaller one. So, for example, if you just have a squared one, maybe you know that from your chat. Then, for example, in Slack, then the squared picture would sit next to that. But if you want to promote it a bit, like a bit bigger, then use that format. So squared will be always displayed kind of differently and also smaller. And this, let's say, business card OG image aspect ratio, this will always be prominent.
Maybe you can go back to your slide with the dev tools, with the application, with the network tab.
Oh.
I wanted to suggest to use the application tab, because there you see the cookies. They just said it's nothing bad if Google Tag Manager is called on the network tab. That's not GDPR relevant, because only if they put the cookie on the site, then it's critical. So the request is okay, but you must check that no cookie is set without consent.
But it's just for the, definitely, I mean, it's about the cookies. But when I know that we are just firing 100 requests, this also doesn't feel like this is, it just feels weird to know that there's so much communication, even if they didn't store any cookie. But when I want to provide a nice user experience for my visitors, then this is gives me a small shock.
Legal checking the application tab is more important.
I'm sorry, right about that. Are you sure about that? Because if you send a ping, Google will know the IP address. The user.
That's not GDPR. To call Google Tag Manager is okay.
What's also crazy, sometimes you need to load Google Tag Manager to load other services. So in order that this whole tracking system works, there is sometimes that one request that is technically required. And it's a weird topic. And to have this like full with, I mean, if there are just 2 requests, I would not even put this into my slide. I could ignore that. But this is like a bit too much that is not part of Drupal.org. So it was a bit confusing when taking that one here as an example. But yeah, application tab it's here. It always makes sense to just go through that and see what your application is doing or what websites are doing. So to click around in DevTools, or use, this would be another topic, but use the performance tab to see how performant your website is, your CSS or JavaScript animations. The DevTools are really powerful. Read only?
Yes, instead of maintenance mode.
Okay.
What it does, it actually hooks in, so you can't write to the database anymore, but like read requests still work. So it means during update times, your website will still work instead of showing the ugly maintenance mode page.
Okay, that's interesting.
I haven't tried it, so I really want to test it.
I also need to check that.
It's like really nice group.
Cool. Yeah, having something that feels like not static, but something that couldn't change. But I mean, in emergency cases, if there's another reason to turn that on, maybe read-only is then not the right option. But to just make sure that nothing happens in the database, but still there's like a nice visitor experience without having like CDN in front of that might be also a good option. Cool. Read-only. Cool. Yeah, I think, or I hope that you could take something into your project. So I think we were a bit quick. I tried to speak slowly, but I think now you have time to check your client websites, your client projects to see if some points are valid or not.
Yeah, one question about CSS and JS aggregation. I think it's a good point to have, because it's not only performance, this get parameter v, and you can detect them whatever.
When I prepared the session, I put this CSS and JavaScript aggregation on the list, but I thought it's too obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious. So let's also take this as the last point, that you should make sure that aggregation is properly enabled. and no development.services file is on there, so we are not exposing like all the cache tags and everything in your headers. So make sure that you leave your development mode and be ready for production. Thank you.